This is Ivy Unleashed, a Gold Ivy production.
Welcome back to part 2 with Gaelin Elmore. We just sat through the most heart-wrenching story. If you have not listened to part 1, please go back. We were just talking about how, you know, hearing a story like this, part of you feels like guilty that, like, God, I've been through nothing compared to what you've been through. And how do you handle that when people say that to you in regards to, like, oh my gosh, I can't even complain because I went through nothing as a child?
We always have opportunities to diminish what we go through and disqualify our own battles and journeys and crosses that we have to carry. One of the beautiful things, outcomes of me going through what I went through, is that I'm extremely empathetic. Like, it's just, there's always nuance. There's always something below the surface that we don't understand. And there's never a black and white, like, plug and place, this would have happened the same or different kind of experience. And so there are friends that I grew up with that just was like, man, I don't want to talk about anything hard around you. It's like, dude, like, your parents getting divorced sucks. Like, you can absolutely feel the weight of that. Mm-hmm. Losing a parent, like I had a teammate lose a parent in a drunk driving accident when we were in high school. It was just like, bro, I can imagine, like, the feeling of that and having to continue to show up. And so it's just like, we all have our own unique journeys. And if anything, the only thing our specific journey gives us license to do or be is more empathetic, right? Like, that's all we should feel from going through what we went through. It's not a badge of honor. It's, you know what? I've been there. I can empathize with how debilitating that might feel, or that I feel like we can get too much in this comparison, like comparing trauma. And it's actually really, like, popular right now, right? To, like, just, I'm going to compare all these different things and experiences and talk. Like, no, we all have our own things to walk. We are unique individuals. We are not the exact same. We don't respond in the same environments. And that's okay.
And pain is pain, right? Like, pain for one person, like, pain, you know, what hurts you. And, like, you don't have to diminish that because somebody has been through something else. But I think it's just, like, something natural that happens, you know, and, like, in our brains, we have to stop because there is that comparison trap, and it's not helpful.
No. And it is helpful, like admiration, right? Appreciation. Like, those things are great. Like, those are productive. I'm always thankful because I take it as a compliment of, like, I appreciate that. But I don't want it to be this backhanded thing where it's like it diminishes what you're going through. Because there's something you have gone through and walked through that you sharing about it and being open and vulnerable will help someone else that in ways I can't, right? So if we continue to uplift everybody, encourage everybody, empower everybody to be their authentic selves, we're going to help more people.
Amen.
Like, my story only speaks to a fraction of society and in like a shared experience kind of way, but we all have our own stories and journeys that we can share that can help more people. So that's all that I try to communicate when that happens.
And I'm so grateful that you are open to sharing your story, because with what you've been through, you have every right to continue to be that little boy that was closed off, that wouldn't let anyone in. And even in college, so for those of you who haven't gone back to part 1 yet, which you're going to right now, but you'll learn that Gaelin and I went to college together. Mm-hmm. And from the moment I met Gaelin, he was warm and loving, and you would never have known what he went through. And you know, I'm sure you've processed way more as the years have gone by, but from college, you always were so loving and like a big brother. You protected me so many times at parties. No one could mess with me because you were there. And I'm curious where you think that comes from.
Yeah, it definitely comes from the experience of, like, being the kid in the corner that didn't have a voice, or having someone wield their authority and power over me in a way that scared. Above everything, my heart is drawn toward justice. Like, that is, righting wrongs is what I'm most passionate about. And even, like, it is something that will get me fired up immediately. Whether it's, like, getting the rules right to a board game, or someone disrespectfully or unjustly, like, disrespecting someone in public. Like, anything like that is just, my heart always yearns for justice and things being right. And it doesn't always mean that the person that is at fault for something happening is the one that's like deserving of justice. Like sometimes they need protection too. And so I can't help it. It's just who I am. And some people, you can go through certain things that like push you away, and it's like, I'm so anti this. And some people respond in a way that's like, I'm so pro. Mm-hmm. And so I was fortunate enough that my heart shifted to the way of like, I will never let someone feel this way if I can do anything about it. That has just always been my heart. And I'm thankful for the ways that it showed up in my past that I didn't consciously know that's how I felt, right? Like I went earlier this year for work, I went back and did a community training in the town that I like grew up in, that I was abused in. And there were teachers there that I had. There were like professionals that were in this, like working for the system that were there. Mm-hmm. And so it was just this moment to have a flashback and to like hear who I was through their eyes, and to see it like now they see me right now and they're like, it makes total sense you're doing what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, wait, I was always this way. Like I was always a kid that was like drawn towards justice. That there was one of my teachers told me a story of a kid who was on the spectrum in our class and was really scared of like spiders and different things. We had a class pet that was a tarantula. And after school, like this other class came into our class waiting for buses. And so they weren't a part of our family, right? Like they were in a different class. They came in and they got to play with the tarantula, but our classmate like kind of freaked out. And she told me this story about how I shouted over everybody and was just like, yo, leave him alone. Like he's good people. Like that's my friend. Like leave him alone. And I remember like, I always looked at myself as like, oh, I was probably such a bully in elementary school, right? Like, cause those hurt people. And so I had to be such a bully, but like to hear stories of they see my heart for justice, even in those moments of my life, was super encouraging for me. Cause it's what I feel so deeply, and what will always drive who I am, what I do, and how I interact with other people it's just who I am.
Mm-hmm. And when I heard that you left Cincinnati Bengals, I wasn't surprised because I knew you were made for more. Yeah. And going back to what you said about hurting people, you took initiative that time in your life to heal, to be whole, so you can now help other people. And so what did that work look like? Because hearing you talk, it's like, this man's full of wisdom, which I think you've always been.
Thank you.
But you can tell you've done some massive work to get to where you are. So what did that look like, taking care of your mental health?
Yeah, I mean, I would be a fool if I didn't start with the spiritual like side of it, right? In college, I gave my life to Christ. There was some healing that was taking place that I didn't even understand in that time frame. Part of my experience in foster care, the abusive home I was in, the only thing I did other than go to school was go to church. And so there was this really dysfunctional relationship with religion and spirituality, but I was drawn toward it. Like I felt like, man, there's something here, but it just doesn't make sense right now for what I'm going through. And so in college, that started that journey. And so thinking about like the purpose of life being more than what I can do, and being really focused on who I can become and how I can influence and impact others, that started to change my lens. And so when my first job that I got after not being an athlete anymore was with a Christian nonprofit working with teenagers that were coming from difficult backgrounds and circumstances. And I took the job because it was like, man, I really want to like invest and give back to where I was at when I was their age. But really it was like simultaneously I was like healing and growing through it. And so, yeah, it took me like being exposed to other contexts where people were like healed, right? Like they aren't actively living from their trauma, where I started to like see a whole different side of life and a whole different way of using what could have been a curse as a blessing to other people. And so contextually, as an athlete, there's this cultural belief that you need to earn your stripes, meaning like you got to put in the time, the years, the effort, the energy, blood, sweat, all of that in order to have a voice. Like, you need to build up to that point. No one's getting anointed something way before they're supposed to. And so I got into the nonprofit work thinking that's the same way. Like, the people who've been here the longest know how it works. They understand it. They're good at what they do, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like rubbing shoulders with people who have been working in nonprofit with kids longer than I've been alive. And I'm like, you must got it figured out. And to like partner with them on projects and be like, you know nothing. And it's just like, there's something that I feel, that justice part of me, that it's like, oh no, like I get this. This is something that's like, I've been living it for so long that there's value to be added here. So I started to really learn what influence and like what role my story could have in this space. And in that time, like, I knew I had to like, well, if I'm going to use that, I really need to process it. I really need to understand it. I really need to learn how to contextualize it so that it can benefit other people beyond just being a story. And so simultaneously, I'm like, this is helping the people I'm serving. It is making this space actively better, but I'm becoming better because of it. And that's really what that journey started. And I just followed that inner voice of like really being drawn toward justice. So I got into diversity, equity, inclusion work, which again, the core of most of our issues in our society, like, have to do with disagreements around what is right and what is wrong. Mm-hmm. And I feel like I have this natural draw toward like what I feel like is objectively just. There are many times where I feel things in my gut that's like, this is right, even though it goes against what I believe, right? It's just like, this is the right way to do, like, go about this. And so I followed that in the diversity, equity, inclusion space. Quickly felt like, okay, like there's some perspectives, some thoughts, some ideas I have here that aren't common, but I think it's impactful. Mm-hmm. That slowly led me to belonging, which I was like, okay, this is applicable to diversity, equity, inclusion. But I was like, there's got to be more here. Like, I really like love this idea. I need to learn more. And so I just like, I binged, like researched, and just was like, okay, there's like all these different spaces of psychology and neuroscience and school belonging and all these things. And then I was like, there's not a lot of people talking about the impact that belonging has on trauma, or trauma has on belonging, or vice versa. I was like, that's got to be the key to what I went through. Mm-hmm. Like, thinking there were spaces and moments in my life that I had belonging in some way, shape, or form that allowed me to not be impacted by the trauma I was experiencing in the ways that I should have been. Because all my life, people would, when they found out my story, be like, Gaelin, how are you the way that you are? And I never had an answer for it. I always felt super guilty or super like embarrassed by that question. And when I stumbled across belonging, that was the first time I was like, that's it. Like, that's the thing that helped me become what I became. Because I use this example all the time. It was like me and my biological family went through a car wreck, and I was the only person that survived. If you ask a person who survived something like that, how'd you do it? They're not going to have a good response. It's going to be traumatic for them to think about that, because you're going to have survivor's guilt, remorse. You're going to be like, well, why did I survive it? Why me and not my sister? Why me and not my parents? Like, all these things. And I, like, as I started to learn more about belonging, was like, that's why. Like, I had support. I had this safety belt that was like keeping me from being impacted in the ways that my sisters were occupying the same spaces, but didn't get that from the people around them. Didn't get that from, they didn't have the same teachers I did. They didn't have the same experiences. They didn't have a coach that invested in them when they were older. Like, I was privileged in my trauma. And so when I was like, oh, that's the outcome, it's like, well, we need to do that for everybody. Like, this is the cure to, like, quote unquote cancer. Like, we need to make sure everybody has it. And so that is immediately when it was like, I know what I want to do the rest of my life. And I know a lot of people don't like learn that ever, let alone as early as I did, but it was just like, for the next 50 plus years, this is what I'm doing. I want every kid, every person that is struggling, going through hard things, to know that they belong somewhere, in that really, I want society to understand that people, like, being successful has a lot more to do with the support around them than it does the individual. Like, we live in a culture and a context where people are like, I'm him, right? Like, it's me. I got out the mud, did it on my own, self-made, all this stuff, right? And I, to an extent, I understand what they're saying. Like, they went through a lot. But you had support along the way that helped you get there. Whether you are at a spot in your life where you can acknowledge it and realize it, sure, maybe that's not true yet. But the support that you had is what helped you get there. And I can't look back on my life and boast about what I experienced, because I know I was fortunate enough to have the support that I needed when I needed it. And I know people who were way more talented, way more gifted than I was that didn't. And they didn't make it out. And so helping people that have an opportunity to do something about it, understand, like, hey, that kid that is on your caseload, them succeeding in the ways that they can succeed has way more to do with you than it does them. How is that going to change your work? If you as a teacher think, well, this kid as a fourth grader, the likelihood that they graduate high school has way more to do with how I support them right now than it does their cognitive abilities as they grow. Changes the way you do your work, changes the way you show up, and changes the accountability, instead of like, you know what, that Gaelin kid had so much potential but never got it together. It's like, if they had so much potential, do something about it. Like, help them. As much as we talk about like the self-made kind of side of it, we also try to like point fingers at people who didn't make it and say, hey, it's your fault. Like, it's easier to say that, but it's like, where did their support fail them? Where did their places where they were known, where they were understood and appreciated for who they were and not what they did, that helped them get over the hump that was too steep to climb on their own? We're all a product of the support that we have. And so that it allowed me to really process my past in a whole new light, right? Like, when we talked about my coach's family, like, it took years after the fact for me to really appreciate and understand what they did for me, and to respectfully like see them in this positive light instead of seeing them in opposition of what my family could have experienced. But they provided belonging. Teachers that I probably were like frustrated with because they didn't speak up enough for certain things that I was experiencing, provided belonging for me in a way that allowed me to still persevere through the stuff that was happening. And so it allowed me to heal like my past in a way that was different, and allowed me to see hope for the future for other people that was like real, right? Like, people sometimes hear my story and like, well, Gaelin, you're 6'5" and you were an athlete and you like said school always came easy to you. And it's just like, yeah, but like my sister, like there were people, my sisters included, were way more talented and gifted than I was, didn't have the support they needed and didn't. My work is really largely like dictated by my ability to turn this idea of a success story on its head. Stop promoting individuals. Like, I get on stages and platforms because I'm a success story, but then I get on there and tell them, hey, I'm only this way because people supported me in the way that I needed when I was going through it. You have an opportunity to do that for somebody else. Are you going to do it?
Ooh, that's powerful. When I keep thinking, like, you've dropped your ego. Like, you could totally say, I'm a self-made man. Like, 100% you could say that because you did go through so much, and you are the one in your family that is, you know, quote unquote, the most successful, or, you know, however you want to look at it. And I think it's beautiful that you're flipping that on its head. And like you said too, like, it took you a bit to see it this way. So what helped you kind of drop your ego to learn about belonging and like understand how much it played into your success?
Again, that empathy piece, right? Of like seeing other people who are capable, who are talented, who are special, that didn't have the support they needed. And so their potential was like had a ceiling. It was capped. My parents are extremely gifted people that experience things that they never had support to overcome. And like in their 60s right now are children. They're kids because their development and growth has been stunted because they haven't had the necessary support to get to where they need to go. My dad taught me how to play chess when I was like literally 3 years old. Like I was playing chess at 3. I valued school, and school came naturally to me because when my sisters got home from school and my dad got home from work, he made me sit and learn their homework while they were doing it. And so like my dad was always a gifted teacher, extremely gifted teacher, would have been a phenomenal early childhood educational like professional, but never got the support he needed. Like never was spoken into in a way that's like, hey, that is a unique gift for a male to have. Like, let's pour into that. He thought he was weird, right? Like, why do you want to like teach young kids? And so there are gifts that people have that really can only be seen by the people around them. And it's like, how can we help you get to where you want to go? And so like that allowed me to grow and thrive at a very early age and really shaped how I saw the world. So like I'm learning how to play chess and I'm thinking about like strategy and I'm thinking about like the balance of power and all this stuff in my life, taking it from a game, chicken or the egg. Maybe I was competitive before it, but like that fueled something in me that when I got to school and I was in a Montessori like school environment allowed me to thrive even more despite the trauma that I was experiencing at home. Like I was being stimulated. I was growing. It's all about the empathy and being able to put ourselves in someone else's shoes and understand like, man, if you just had what I had, like my sister, Felicia, who's 3 years older than me, she's 6'2". She dunked a basketball for the first time as a junior in high school. She ran 11 seconds in the 100-meter dash. She was by far, when we played football, she had to be the quarterback because she threw the furthest. And she couldn't be a receiver because no one could catch her. So it was just like unfair. She was a cheat code. And it was just like she could walk onto a court and be one of the best people there. She never graduated high school. She could have played volleyball, ran track, played basketball at Division I in college if she wanted to. Never had the support to get there. I was envious of her most of my childhood. Like, how are you so gifted? You just try something new and you're so good at it.
So how do you tangibly help that, right? Like you're speaking at places, you're trying to create this supportive environment. Because like me, naturally, I'm thinking, okay, you see a gift in a kid, you tell them. Because like a person says one sentence to you when you're 8 and you can remember that forever. Totally. Or like you all of a sudden it's your identity. You're like, I'm fast, so I'm a runner. You know, like, so besides like kind of voicing the good you see in kids, like how can we help kids feel belonging and create this environment so that kids like your sister can develop that gift?
I'm gonna get clinical on you.
Okay.
All right. So there's this definition of belonging that I use and is like kind of a foundation of all the work that I do. And it's from one of like psychologists from the 1950s. So like he didn't even have language or definitions or words that we have today to explain trauma, to explain some of the things. But he defined belonging in 3 ways. He said, first, it's the yearning for connection to a group or a community of people. So we all have this yearning, this subconscious, innate, fundamental need to be connected to a group or a community of people. The second part is a need for positive regard. So we all need to know that there are people out there that care about what we're going through, who we are, what's happening to us beyond what we can do or provide for them. So no strings attached. You inherently have people who care about you. And then third is a desire for personal connection, personal relationship. So I need to be known at some level intimately with people in my life so that they can know when I'm not behaving in the way that's normal to me, so that they can understand what I'm bringing to the table and how that might influence how I show up. Those 3 things are like what I call the core 3 of belonging. When we think about kids, if we know before anything, they need connection. They need to feel like they are an important part of a community or group of people. If you prioritize that, you are helping them acclimate. You're helping each person or a part or piece of that group see inherent value in the other individual, giving them freedom and safety psychologically and physically to be a part, be who they are there, be authentic, be true, be real, be vulnerable. If you can do that, then you like think about positive regard. Now, if you do what I want you to do or not, you still get access to this safe space. You still get access to being your vulnerable, authentic self, even if it's behaviors and emotions I don't like. So even if you are acting out of this world, like it's just like, and I got young kids, they act out of this world, despite of how bad your behavior or actions might be, I'm not removing your right to connection. Regardless, you have value here regardless of what you do for me. When you do that, and I know like, okay, my connection isn't dependent on what I do or who I am. It's just, it's on the table. I show up, I don't, it's still there. It's not removed. And then to be known on a like intimate level, it's like, man, if I do show up and I have behavior that's not maybe who I normally am when I'm showing up, I don't have to explain to you why I'm acting that way. You see it and like, Gaelin, you know, that's not who you are. That's not what you believe in. That's not what you stand for. Like, what's going on?
Kind of like I care enough about you to point it out and know you well enough because you're so loved here that
something's off.
Yeah.
Think about a kid. Like, I don't have words to explain the trauma that's happening to me. I can't explain why this is making me feel like I want to be angry today. But if you can recognize that I'm acting a way that's out of character and you can respond accordingly, that creates a sense of connection here. And so it's like, you know what? Like, it's okay that I don't know. I don't have to explain to everybody. And say I'm in a different space and I don't have that. I can come back here and experience that relief, experience that connection. That's what was happening in my school. I would go home and it didn't make sense there. And I'd come back to school and it's like, oh, they know me. They know like when Gaelin's talking out or acting like a class clown, like that doesn't automatically mean he should get sent to the office. It's like, how can we keep him here, keep him connected, keep him a part of this without being punitive in our response to how he's showing up? And so for kids, to prevent them from attaching their worth or who they are, their identity to a specific thing, compliment, experience, you let them know, like, this is how I see you. This is who you are. And this is how it's going to be regardless of what happens in your life and what you go through. And so through those experiences, through that consistent response and expectation, you can start to like freely try things. And then you just, through authentic relationship, like speak into it. Like, hey, Gaelin, I noticed that like when you said that joke today, like a lot of people laughed. How'd that make you feel? I don't know. Like, I was just being me. It was like, well, I like sometimes it's disruptive in class, but like, let's keep figuring out ways that you can be you. Right. So it's just like a totally different approach to from behavior correction to like, this is going to be super corny and I've never said it this way, but from behavior correction to belonging and connection. Right. Like that's a bar. I didn't plan on it. So don't look at me as being this corny person, but
he's pretty corny.
Yeah. It's the dad thing, you know, I'm wearing the hat and I'm proud. So it's a total shift in how we see people. And think about how freeing that would be as a kid, right? To not think like this thing about me needs to change and think about like, man, they see value in this. How can I like find more? Like there's another foster sibling who was adopted in that abusive home who was another just supremely gifted person, like super talented artist, could freehand anything, was super creative in building, always the funniest kid in the room, like literally did impersonations, could just crack jokes and everyone would be dying laughing. I'm just sitting there back like, man, I wish I could make people laugh like that, which I know now I am funny. I'm funny to adults, not kids, right? But see, y'all laughed, but I would look at him and be like, you are so talented. And he never saw any of that as more than a disruption. He would get in trouble for drawing in class. He would get detention for cracking too many jokes, and that would get him in more trouble at home. If he did that at home, so it just became this cycle of everything that I'm good at is not acceptable. That I consider him a brother. He got incarcerated at 17 years old. Still has been like involved with the justice system for most of his adult life. And I connected with him when I went back to town for that training that I did. And it was just like, dude, you may not understand this, but I need you to know it's not your fault. I saw you. I looked up to you. You are one of the most gifted people that I've ever known, even to this day. you deserve more. You deserve people to see your gifts. And I've been trying to tell them, I was like, there's even spaces now in your adulthood to use those same gifts. How can I help you do that? Yeah. And so, again, it's just shifting, and it's just like giving people freedom to be who they are and not seeing their behavior as a reason to not invest, but seeing their potential as a reason to help them figure it out. And there's just so many people with so much potential that everyone's focused on what they're doing and not who they could be. And for me, I was just fortunate enough that people disregarded what I was doing and saw something that I could grow and evolve into being, and they invested and acted accordingly. So that is what I feel like we could do for kids and change.
I feel I'm really like petty and angry right now. Like, I'm so pissed at that family. Like, how do you not have this anger? Because you literally watched your sisters and this foster brother be in the household and like have all this potential. And because they didn't support them, obviously you had support outside of it, but like, it just makes me so mad that people like them can even have children in their house. Yeah. Like, how do you not like have that resentment and anger, or how do they like handle that?
I think they still like, I've been fortunate enough to be able to process some of this stuff. And so a lot of what I'm doing, I'm actively trying to apply it to them so that they can start to process it, right? So that they can stop holding themselves like accountable for things that they had no control over. Like, we were kids. And I didn't play sports until I left that home. Like, the first year I ever played on a sport team, I was in 6th grade. And that was after I was removed from that home. They were older than I was. So they had more time to not play sports, to not find coaches, to not find other people that were investing into them in that way. I was fortunate enough that I was just younger, right? So it's just empathy, put myself in their shoes. Like, if I was a 14-year-old in that home, probably looks a lot different for me. And so, again, those opportunities to see how fortunate we are compared to someone else who may not be where we think they should be, and understand, like, it could have been better, could have been different. It just changes how you respond to other people. And so there's frustration with the brokenness of the system, the brokenness of like just what kids have to go through is you can't totally vet every single person, right? You're never going to know the intentions or heart behind someone. You can try and you can put all these barriers into place to try to fix it. But I mean, foster care is like imperfect solution to an impossible problem. There is no right answer to families not being able to take care of their children. There is no right response to that. So I'm now thankful for foster care in a lot of ways, because there's so many kids who get better experiences in the system versus when they were home. That's totally great. But now it's like, well, how can we make it better? Like, yeah, we'll never be perfect. We'll never totally eliminate trauma. How can we make it better? And helping people understand like this shift in like providing belonging versus focusing on behavior and what people are doing, it totally creates a different perspective for what we're doing. So yeah, there's frustration, and there's still accountability to be handed out and responsibility of adults to do the right thing. But ultimately it's never going to be perfect. But how can we give everybody the chance that they need? Because that's really all it comes down to. How can we provide you the support you need to get a chance at life that you wouldn't have gotten otherwise?
It's like preventative medicine.
Yeah. Well, and it's what helped you.
Yes.
And using that to serve others. You could focus on being a victim. You could focus on the pain and the hate, but instead you're choosing to focus on how can I serve? How can I help?
Yeah.
And that's beautiful.
And I would say there are moments where I do fall into that.
Yeah.
There are moments where I'm like super like pissed off, and because like the trauma becomes so like strong and loud in that current situation where it's just like, I'm not my best self. But this is exactly the reason. Like, it's after I get through that little spell, it's like, this is exactly why I'm doing what I'm doing. Because people that have those experiences and those spells, like, they don't have experiences that counteract it, or they don't have the support that helped them get through that, then that can like go on. Like, I literally, my last event I was at, I did the keynote. I felt like I crushed it. Like, there are sometimes I walk off, I was like, oh, that was okay. So I literally got off stage and I was like, man, like that felt so good. Like, I crushed that. They were engaged. My jokes hit. They laughed. There was a right close. I was on time. Like all the different things hit. And I got back to my room and I just had this like moment of like just sadness and just like, and I'm by myself, right? Like all the people are gone. My family didn't travel with me. I'm in the hotel room and I'm just like, man, why am I doing this? Like, and it's just off this immense high. Mm-hmm. And I just had to call my wife and vent. And I just had to talk to her. And I was like, I literally asked her, I was like, should I keep doing this? Like, should I keep being away from my family and doing all these things and investing? I was like, I don't know what it's for. But my support got me through that. And it was just like, all right, I'm ready to go. Some people don't have that. And so they go and try to get a job to continue to provide for their family and they don't get it. And they're like, why would I even try? And then they don't have support to lift them up and encourage them to keep going. That's what we need. We all need those people that are going to help lift us up in the moments where we feel like we don't have enough anymore. I'm just fortunate enough now in life that I have that. And I had that as a kid. But everybody needs it. It's not an exclusive invite. Like this is, the door's open for anybody. And as long as like I have breath in my lungs and ability to work, like that is what I'm going to be focused on. Because it happens where, man, trauma's like, it's not going anywhere. It's still here. It will continue to find new ways to show itself. And I'll continue to have to find new ways to deal with it. Other people don't understand what that is. They don't understand why they feel and act and self-sabotage and do the things that they do. And it has nothing to do with them. It has everything to do with what they went through and the lack of support they had when they were going through it.
The work you're doing is so powerful. I feel like my mind is just going wild thinking about just the opportunities that people can think of their own childhood, of what they needed, what that could be, or reaching out to you to say, what can I do in my community? Like, do you have any ideas? Because sometimes when your brain's in this space, you're like, I can think of 50 things you could do, you know? Yeah. So where can people find you if they want to connect with you, follow you? Where can they find you? I have
a website that like you can find information there. You can learn more about what I'm doing. You can even like shoot me like a submit or a contact form or something to have a certain request on there. And that's my first name, GaelinSpeaks.com. And then I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. I'm probably most active on Instagram, so people can reach out to me there. I would love to answer any questions you have. And it's important work. And this mission isn't a solo mission, right? It's equip, support, supply everyone with whatever they need to be the difference, make a difference where they live. And so I'm not gatekeeping anything. Like it's not trademarked. Like you can use it, you can take it, apply it, whatever. So I would love to connect if anyone wants to do so.
And I hope everyone does apply it because to your point, Gaelin, whether you're an educator, a teacher, a pastor, like whatever you are, you have the ability and the responsibility to make that impact for the youth, for even not the youth, for your neighbor, anyone.
Yeah.
Right. There's these moments where we can extend that hand and offer support or belonging. And this is just a beautiful reminder of that.
Yeah.
And so thank you for your time. Thank you for being you. So grateful.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
That you're here today. We leave our listeners with 3 gold stars. So your top 3 takeaways. Please share yours.
I think one, it goes back to the like comparison of stories, right? At its core, we all need to belong. There are so many ways that if we don't experience that in our childhood, that can become traumatic in and of itself. You don't have to be physically abused. You don't have to be homeless. You don't have to do all these things to lack belonging and connection where you desire it most. And so, yeah, this conversation may have made you feel like less than or something about your own story or journey. But at its core, hear me like share and talk about I lacked belonging, and that's what drove my life and the decisions I made in an effort to find it. And so think about ways in your life that maybe your decisions were dictated by it. Maybe how you showed up in a certain space was dictated by it. And then think about how you can meet that belonging need for other people as you go forward. So I think that's definitely one is at its core, we're all just people looking to belong somewhere. There's a quote that I absolutely love, and it says, we are all born looking for someone looking for us. When we find that, and this is not part of the quote is we're all born looking for someone looking for us. When we find that is what varies. Some people find that immediately. Some people takes a little bit of time. Some people throughout their childhood may never find it. Some people throughout their life may never get the privilege of finding it.
Oh man, that's so powerful. Woo! That's such a beautiful quote. Okay, sorry to interrupt.
No,
wow.
No, it did the same thing to me when I read it. And the reality was I was an adult looking for it, looking for someone looking for me. How can we be looking for other people? Whether it is in true friendship and relationship with one another, whether it is seeing them deal with something in your community, maybe someone struggling at the grocery store to pay for what they have. How can you be that someone looking for them as they are looking for other people? That is what we're really called to do as human beings. We're the most socially dependent species on this planet. That is what we all need and desire. So how can you be that in your space?
That's one.
That's one. You don't need to be like the hero in the story to make a difference. There are so many people that had such small roles in my life that left lifelong impacts on me and who I am. There's a story of a janitor from that elementary school when I was like from 1st through 6th grade. Her name is Miss Peanut. I share her story on stage all the time. I don't know her real name. It was not disrespectful to call her Miss Peanut. Everybody called her Miss Peanut. She was called Miss Peanut because she was about 4'5". I was taller than her in 1st grade, but she had the biggest heart. And she didn't see her work as I'm in custodial services. She saw her work as like, I'm impacting children and I also do custodial services. And she was just so good at that. She never was a teacher. She was never the authority figure in my life or experience, but I remember her, and I will always remember her because of the way that she loved and cared for people around her. And so sometimes I share my story and people hear my coach and they're just like, man, like good for him, but I could never do that. I could never be a foster parent. I could never be an adoptive parent. We like disqualify ourselves. There's something you can do. There's something you can do. If you're going to be authentic about who you are, what you're doing, what's at your like fingertips, then you'll figure it out. But if you want to continue to disqualify yourself and stick your head in the sand, then you won't. But you don't have to be the hero in someone's story to make a difference. Every single role needs to be filled. So that's 2. There's no point of arrival. I think we already talked about this, right? Like part of what I do for work, and yes, I'm influencing professionals and adults in the space, but part of what I'm doing is actively creating pathways for people who went through what I went through to do what I'm doing. So like when I occupy a stage, I'm thinking like, how can I set up the next former foster kid to be on the stage and do well and to be looked at as a professional and not just someone who's there to trauma vomit all over everybody. When I get a chance to connect with former foster youth about what I'm doing and after I speak or whatever, it's always so uplifting because there's no point of arrival. I'm not any better or any like further along or any more qualified than they are. I'm just putting my head like to the ground and going to work, and we will figure it out, and we will become better versions of ourselves as we go. And so I know I'm on this podcast as this guest that can speak into all these things, but like I'm still actively figuring it out. As someone who is helping people provide belonging for kids, there are times I still fail my children. Like I'm not a perfect individual and I have not arrived. I'm just actively working on it. And I know that even though I'll never get there, it's not going to stop me from trying. Don't think through like this like perfectly curated like culture and society that we live in. Don't like diminish where you are and the impact you can have because you're not there yet. Like I'm not either. And the sooner we acknowledge that, the better off we're going to be. And the more likely we're willing and capable and able to occupy spaces we should. And so, yeah, there is no point of arrival.
I love that. I think it's liberating to know that I don't have to wait until I'm ready because I'm never going to be ready. Yeah. I can show up in this moment with what I have and with the idea and the intention of making a difference. That's all that matters.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow, those were beautiful. Whew. Can we do 5 gold stars? No. Okay. All right. To Unleashing Ivy surprise rapid fire questions. Mine has to do kind of flipping the script to the people that feel alone or feel like they, maybe you're an adult and you just like feel like you don't have a support system. You feel like you haven't like found the people that really talk about your gifts or make you feel plugged in, or maybe you just have like really crappy circle that you just know is not it. Like, what advice would you give to kids or adults that are kind of looking for that belonging?
Yeah.
And how do you like find healthy belonging?
I would actually venture to say healthy belonging finds you.
Mm.
So I actually, like, my wife asked me this question about my work. She was just like, Gaelin, how do you find so many like cool people that are so closely aligned to what you believe in, the change you want to see in the world? And like not every time, but I would say probably like 70% of the people I partner with, I'm like, we're friends now. Like, I know you just paid me, but like, we're friends. And my answer to that was like, I don't, they find me. But what we need to do to get there is like, we need to find who we are, right? Like, we can get so focused on the people around us. If you're in a circle of people that you feel like, man, this isn't it, it's because you're not being who you are. They are still there because you're not authentically who you are yet. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's you like kicking the can down the road. Like, I don't want to change, or that I don't want to acknowledge that, or whatever. Or you're trying to be something that other people think you should be. And so when we like authentically step into who we are and find that, we genuinely, I'm not in this whole like universe, like you'll attract it to you, but like people will see that, honor that, and respect that, and they'll find you, and then you'll know. Yeah. So like for me, when I got done with football, and I was like, I need to figure out who I am. I need to stop pursuing the people that was my family. The people I thought, my circle that I thought would be those people weren't it. And it was just like, all right, I'm done chasing that. Let me figure out me. Mm-hmm. And so I went on this journey to like heal myself and figure out how can I be me in the world. Mm-hmm. And then that's when my people started to find me.
I feel like you can feel that too. You're like, God, this just like, I'm not looking forward to being with this circle of people, or yes. Like, I haven't found any mom friends that I get along with great. It's like, cause a lot of times when you're a mom or parent, like you don't take the time to understand, like, cause you're an evolving person, and then you have a baby and you're like, I don't even know who I am now. Yeah. Like, do I hang out with these people that don't have kids? Like, what does this mean for who I am? Yeah. So you change as a person. And so I think it's a constant, like, that's why we talk about this check-in. And I love that you keep talking about authenticity, is because like, if you don't know who you are, what you value, what you want to talk about, what's important to you, you will be around people that don't match it. So I love that. It's brilliant.
Like, we are going to go through seasons, right? Things will change. We'll be different versions of ourselves. But if we continue to find and like commit to finding who we are in that new season, the people from the previous one will decide if they want to be around for it or not. Mm-hmm. Like, they will be like, you know what? Like, if you're your authentic new mom self, and it's just like, well, I'm not really, like, they might be like, I'm not in that season of life. Like, I don't know if we should, like, I can't do the bedtime thing. I can't do the babysitter thing, which is real. Mm-hmm. Like, that happens. Yeah. But the people who want to, and they still want to be around you because of who you authentically are, they'll be there. Mm-hmm. Me and my wife talk about this all the time. It's just like, we need to like be who we are and trust that we will be in the spaces we're supposed to be in. And the people that we are supposed to be connected with will be connected with. We got to stop getting caught up in being who people think we should be. Even if you can be in a room full of people and still feel alone because you're not being who you are. Mm-hmm. You're like, I don't know who that person is. Like, we all know, like, still sometimes when I get back with my family, I like become a person that I don't like, I'm not even this way. Yeah. Like, why am I doing this?
There's some kind of quote that's like, if you think you're healed, go hang out with your family of origin. And you will quickly learn, like, you have so much more work to do.
Yes. So it's really just do work on yourself. Yeah. And once you get there, then just like boldly occupy spaces, and you'll meet people. Like, there's still times to this day, like, I'll be at an event and I'll meet someone. I'm like, I want to be friends with them. And it's because I can tell that they are being who they are. And although I might not be in the season of, like, there are so many people who have like preteen or teenager, like, children that are like, we're not in the same season of life. I have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. And so, but it's like, I want to kind of be like you when I'm there. So like, as long as you're willing to let me be around, I'm willing to like adjust what I got going on to be a part of it. That's what that's like when people like experience you and they're like, I want to stay connected. Like, you're good people. Yeah. That's the greatest compliment I feel like we can get, because you're being who you are.
That tees me up perfectly for my next question, which is you being a dad. You just said you have a 1-year-old, a 3-year-old.
Yeah.
So my question.
Girl dad, by the way.
Which is so fitting.
Yeah.
You are totally a girl dad.
Yeah.
Now that you have these babies, knowing what you went through, your childhood, what are you doing differently?
I'm making sure that as much as I can, that my daughter feels like she has a voice, that she's an active participant. And I say my daughter because my 3-year-old, like my 1-year-old is talking gibberish. Like you can have a voice, like, but you're not actively in this right now. But like really balancing, like I feel like I need control a lot. And so like, but still not letting my need for that to diminish her voice. And so that she's just not a passive bystander, her own experience. I'm not good at it yet. I'm working on it, but really wanting her to feel like we are equals. Like, hey, daddy messes up too. Like, I'm sorry. I handled that wrong. I raised my voice. I'm sorry. Will you forgive me? And like giving her space to be like, no. I'm like, okay, daddy will try in a little bit. You want to go do something? You want to go outside? You want to go drive your little Elsa car around? But like, I want her to know that she is valued and she's not just a possession. She's not just a kid that I have supreme authority over. It's like, I need to pursue you and apologize. I need to pursue you and reconcile. I need to honor you when I mess up. And you can also hold me accountable when I'm doing that to other people. Actively thinking about adult that I want to cultivate or help cultivate, have a hand in cultivating, really starts with her knowing that she has a voice, that I will always honor her voice. And if I fail to, that I'll come back and like make sure I try to write that. And so that she knows she has power, right? Like I just felt so powerless in my childhood. And so that's something that is actively showing up every single day. And I see things in her as like, she is kind of like, I don't know if it's justice centered yet, but she is absolutely drawn to things being right. Like she is like, even when like 2 days ago, we were at the park. I was changing our 1-year-old and my wife and our 3-year-old had the diaper bag. So it was like, hey, I need a diaper. I had wipes, but I was like, I need a diaper. And my wife gave our 3-year-old the diapers and wipes. And she ran them over to me and I was like, okay, thanks for the diaper. I don't need the wipes. Can you take them back? She was like, no, mommy said bring these. And I'm like, okay, thank you. I don't need them. Take them back. And she like got genuinely upset because she was told one thing and I wasn't honoring what she was told. And so I got frustrated because I'm like, I'm trying to change your poop sister. Like, let me be for a second, take the wipes back, just listen to what I'm saying. But after the fact, it's just like, there's a part of her that is like screaming out to me saying like, this isn't what I was told. This isn't right. And so I'm trying to honor that through the lens of what I experienced because I was so drawn to like, this isn't right either. And I never felt like people listened to me when I voiced that. And so that is something like literally 2 days ago, I'm actively in it. I have not arrived, but we are working on it. We're on the journey.
That's awesome. I feel like so many parents do need to hear that. Like, that's a great perspective that maybe they didn't get as a kid because they didn't even think about having a voice because they were just told you don't, you're to be seen, not heard. It does kind of backfire when they're a little older.
Yes.
They will keep you in check.
Yes.
They're the greatest teachers. So I look forward to your stories when they're like 10 and 8. And it's great though, because I think it's like the best form of accountability. Like you're trying to give these kids a voice and be who they are. And sometimes they're very different than you. And you're like, oh my God, can you just do what I say?
Yeah.
But it's like, no, it's important for them to analyze the situation, speak up, and feel safe doing that. So that was beautiful. Okay. Last question. If you could go back and tell younger Gaelin something, any age.
Okay.
What age would you go back to and what would you tell him?
I mean, probably 18-year-old me. I would probably go back to 18-year-old me and tell him that work, like figure out who you are and the right people will come along. Like I was so determined to find my people, but it wasn't me. So it was just like, I wasn't even giving myself a chance really in college with like relationships, right? Like I didn't know who I was and I didn't know how to be myself around other people. So they got a shell of me or a version of me that wasn't me. And then I felt some type of way because they didn't know me. And so it was just like holding people accountable for what I'm doing. And so I feel like there's so many like points of frustration or points of like regretting how I handled things and not being a justice-centered person with certain parts of my life that could have been avoided or would have been more aligned with who I am now and who I've always been, that would have changed my experience in college. And so I'm 18-year-old me, because I just thought I had it all figured out. And younger me was just like head down, like we're grinding. And then 18 was just like, all right, we're here. Like this, I have it all figured out. This is what I'm doing, and I'm just going to power through. And like people need more finesse than that. And yeah, I just like, I'm not a regret person, right? That's why I like frowned when you brought up the question. But I think that perspective would have been really helpful of just like, dude, go on this journey of like you accepting what you've gone through and you accepting who you are and how that makes you show up in the space right now. I was so terrified that people would figure out the real me and never want anything to do with me and like just see me as damaged goods. And it was just, so it's like, if everything, I'm going to put on this facade that I do have it all together, that I'm all good, nothing hurts me, like all this stuff. When really I was just like, I was this little kid inside. And so like healing that inner like kid, accepting like, this is who I am, this is who I'm going to be. Better get like familiar and acclimated and comfortable with it now. And I think I would have experienced way more authentic relationship in college. Because I just look back at a lot of points in my life where it's like, I had like friendship or community at almost all of it, but I wasn't me, right? Like there were times that I showed myself. There were times that I let people in, but I wasn't experiencing like the true version of that. And when I saw other people like experiencing it, I got like jealous or I got hurt. And it was just like, I didn't work on me. And it was no one's fault, like no one else's fault, no one else's responsibility. And so if I could tell my 18-year-old self that, I think I would be better off today because of it. And again, it changes things, right? But I don't necessarily want anything to change, but I think that would have been a helpful perspective at that time.
I think every college kid should be forced to do inner child work, that should be a class. Because think about it, you come to college, whether you're out of state or even from a town over, you have a whole new group of people. You're trying to impress them. Like, I didn't know who the hell I was.
Yeah.
I was still figuring it out. And you want to be cool. Then you're exposed to drugs and alcohol and everyone's drinking. And that's your way of fitting in as a child. And as a college kid, we have a human need for belonging.
Yeah.
And so if you don't know who the hell you aren't going to attract the right people to make you feel whole. Yeah. And again, that's no one else's job but yours. But I think from a young age, if we had that support, college, we had a class, high school, we had a class where you were actually forced to be authentic and to work on you, so many things would change.
Yeah.
And that's why the work you're doing right now is so important.
Thank you.
We're so grateful that you're doing it.
Same to you.
Thank you. We leave our listeners, Gaelin, with a quote, a piece of gold.
Ooh.
We know you love quotes just like we do. So please pick one of your favorites.
I gave you probably like the diamond of the bunch already.
You can re-say it.
This isn't as much of a quote as it is a resource. Obviously, we said we're all born looking for someone looking for us. This one is from a book that Dr. Bruce Perry, who is like, if you want to learn anything about trauma, anything about like the psychology behind it all, great place to start. Does a phenomenal job of making it digestible for someone who's not like, I'm not on my way to be a doctor, not happening anytime soon. So he did a book with Oprah about trauma. And the title of it is What Happened to You? And it's really this shift and this play on words or this reversal of what's wrong with you versus what happened to you. And I think it's just such a powerful way for us to look at what other people are going through and stop seeing them as their current selves, this product that it's like, hey, why are you the way that you are? Like, what's wrong with you? Like, why would you behave that or that way? Why would you do that? Why would you say that? Instead, thinking about like, what happened to you? What have you gone through that has like forced you to show up right now in this way? If we can shift our thinking from what's wrong with you and shift it to what happened to you, where that's the difference between blame and belonging, right? Like that is what I'm actively trying to help people do. And so whether it's an internal thing and you have to process it and internalize that of like, I need to stop thinking about who I am right now is like, what's wrong with me? And think about, man, what happened to me that influenced me to be this way? And how can I be a better version of myself going forward? Or it's with people you're in a relationship with in your life. Maybe it's a spouse. Maybe it's a in-law or a relative. Maybe it's a friend in the community. Stop thinking in blame like language and start thinking about how we can help them belong.
This is Gold Ivy signing off.
Listen to your truth and go chase your gold.